Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. We begin tonight with a big number, $13 billion, and that is how much money is needed to bring the city of San Diego's infrastructure up to snuff over the next 5 fiscal years. The findings are in a new report which looks at what the city needs versus how much money is available. KPBS reporter John Carroll is in the newsroom with a look at what work is needed.
Maya, the report looks at the needs between fiscal years 2027 and 2031. It finds there is a nearly $8 billion shortfall between available funding and what is needed. The city says it has just over $5 billion to address the infrastructure. Staff presented the report to the city's Active Transportation and Infrastructure Committee this afternoon. That committee is made up of members of the City Council. This was just an informational meeting. No vote was taken. There was very little public testimony, but committee members did weigh in with their thoughts.
So we have a growing need for new buildings, but we also have a growing need for maintenance of our existing buildings. And I see this chasm growing. We need more housing, but we also need more public safety infrastructure to meet the needs of our citizenry.
And so I think there's just some things we need to do to make sure that we have some accountability, not only for our external partners, but also internally, because I think there's room for improvement, and we need to work on identifying those improvements.
While stormwater infrastructure is far and away the biggest need, there are plenty of others. The city needs to update fire stations, and they need new ones. New police facilities are needed, including a firing range, and there is so much more. All of it will be considered by the full city council in an upcoming meeting, and that's when the decisions will be made about what gets funded and what doesn't. Live in the newsroom, John Carroll, KPBS News.
I'm Ariella Scleason. Coming up tonight, as showers begin to move out, clouds stick around, temperatures drop to the 50s. Some cooler weather to wrap up the week, but then a much nicer and warmer weekend ahead. A closer look is coming up.
San Diego is preparing to lower speed limits on more than 20% of the city's roadway network. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says traffic safety advocates are applauding the changes.
Historically, speed limits in California have been based on the actual driving speeds measured in traffic surveys. A new state law gives cities more discretion to set speed limits based on actual safety data. San Diego's proposed comprehensive speed management plan would lower speed limits near schools, in business districts, and on high collision corridors.
We know that speed is one of the biggest determinants of the result of a crash, and that slow speeds save lives. We hope that this plan is approved and that the funds needed to implement the plan are allocated as part of next year's budget.
Even supporters of the speed management plan acknowledged signage alone is not enough to actually change driver behavior, and that changing a street's design can be more effective at slowing down traffic. Councilmember Stephen Whitburn said despite the city's efforts, traffic deaths in San Diego are still too high.
2024 crashes in San Diego killed 24 pedestrians and severely injured 41 other pedestrians. That same year, crashes killed 4 bicyclists and severely injured 14 bicyclists. So clearly there is much more that has to be done. And as we heard today in the presentation and from many of those speaking, vehicles traveling at unsafe speeds are a big part of the problem.
The speed management plan still needs a vote from the full city council. City staff estimate implementing the plan by installing new speed limit signage could take another year and cost $2.4 million. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
MTS is considering price increases for the bus and trolley for the first time in more than 15 years. MTS officials say without them, the budget deficit could exceed $500 million in the next 4 years. Right now, the plan to get back on track is to generate $90 million through fare hikes or service cuts.
As we all know, the cost of doing business, cost of our household budgets, everything else has gone up. And it's gone up for transit too. People just don't want service levels to get cut. So certainly what we've been hearing is that people prioritize service over the cost to ride.
The decision to increase fares will ultimately be left up to the MTS Board of Directors. If implemented, the higher fares wouldn't take effect until July 1st at the earliest. Fare evasion in the North County Transit District is on the rise. KPBS reporter Elaine Alfaro says the increasing number of people not paying for their ride coincides with the district's hands-off enforcement policy.
On a Friday afternoon in January, Doug Gillingham and Dana Freehoff jumped on the North County-bound coaster in Old Town. They were heading back to Solana Beach after a long day of bike riding. They gladly paid the $6.50 fare for their train ride home.
I like supporting mass transit. It's a public benefit.
But these days, riders like Gillingham and others who pay their fares on the coaster and Sprinter have steadily decreased. Since 2023, about a third of coaster riders and more than half of Sprinter riders were fare evaders, according to a KPBS analysis of North County Transit District ridership data. This is a stark change from just a decade ago. Sean Donaghy is the Transit District's CEO. He acknowledges they're behind the curve in addressing the problem.
When we don't have systems set up like a BART does or a New York Transit or DC where you tap to get into the area to make sure that that fare is valid, it's very difficult for our frontline employees to manage that.
He largely blames an erosion of basic civic values for the surging fare evasion rates.
I think there was a sense of ownership by the riders to pay that fare and do those things. I think the temperature has changed a little bit on what people feel compelled to feel like they can get away with.
Regardless of the reason why, the impact on the district is significant. It lost upwards of $4.4 million from fare evasion last year.
It does sound like it's a little bit out of control. I think that's the big thing, and they're losing a lot of money.
That's Philip Plotch, a researcher and senior fellow at the Eno Center for Transportation, a Washington, D.C. think tank. Fare revenues covered less than 8% of the district's operating costs in the most recent fiscal year. That's down from 22% a decade ago. If this downward trend continues, the district might have to cut back on service to the millions of people who rode its trains in the last fiscal year. Plotch says transit agencies nationwide are suffering from shrinking revenue following the pandemic.
But for the most part, we have transit systems that are still operating because of the generosity of the taxpayers.
In North County, the drastic drop in fare revenues coincides with a hands-off fare enforcement approach the district has established in recent years. Donaghy calls it an inform, not enforce policy.
If someone chooses to not pay that fare, we do not intervene at that moment for the safety of the employee.
This approach contrasts with an earlier era, when the district cracked down on fare evasion and code compliance inspectors wrote citations. Fare evasion dropped to less than 2% on the coaster and Sprinter in 2011, according to an agency document uncovered by KPBS. However, a more detailed analysis of how enforcement impacts fare evasion isn't possible. That's because the agency couldn't produce records prior to 2021. Donaghy acknowledged the revenue losses from fare evasion impact operations.
Unfortunately, we're losing out on potential expansion by not having that additional fare revenue.
But Donaghy says the district's hands are tied.
Yes, we need to make sure that we're collecting fare and managing our fiscal responsibility, but also making sure that our employees feel like they're in a space where they're not going to be physically assaulted or harassed over $2.50.
Plotch believes the district's fare evasion challenges could be combated with a combination of education, engineering, and enforcement. He points to the Metropolitan Transit System in San Diego, which increased enforcement last year. the Union Tribune reported that the agency's fare revenue increased by $500,000 a month.
So getting more inspectors and police out there not only is raising revenue, but it's making it safer for passengers. And that is probably going to increase passenger revenue even more.
In North County, the district is currently conducting surveys to determine if fares should increase in order to combat expected budget shortages in the future. Elaine Alfaro, KPBS News.
KPBS journalist Scott Rod contributed research and reporting. Tomorrow we examine the rising number of assaults on the district's trains and buses. If you have a tip for KPBS's investigations team, you can send an email to investigations@kpbs.org or message them on our secure signal line at the number on your screen, 619-594-8177. Britain's King Charles says the law must take its course after the arrest of his younger brother, the former Prince Andrew. The move comes in the wake of revelations in the Epstein files, and as Karen Kafa reports, lawmakers here in the U.S. are pushing for similar accountability for those with ties to the late convicted sex offender.
Britain's King Charles arriving at an event in London Thursday, declining to answer questions about his brother Andrew's arrest.
What's your reaction to your brother's arrest?
Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was arrested Thursday morning on suspicion of misconduct in public office, according to the Thames Valley Police. It comes on the heels of the U.S. Justice Department's release of documents detailing the former prince's ties to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The Thames Valley Police previously said it was assessing whether Andrew shared confidential material with Epstein during his time as a UK trade envoy.
It's a common law offence, and it requires a really high level of proof, because the potential penalty, the total potential penalty, the maximum penalty, is life imprisonment.
The former prince has denied all accusations against him and has not commented on the more recent allegations of misconduct in public office. In a statement, King Charles said the law must take its course and pledged full support for the investigation. The arrest with the potential to send more shockwaves through the British monarchy and government.
The first dramatic fallout that seems to be happening from the publication of these Epstein files seems to be, more than anything else, in the United Kingdom rather than in the United States, where the crisis began.
Some lawmakers on Capitol Hill calling for similar accountability here in the U.S.
Great Britain is holding its powerful and privileged to account. The United States of America should do the same.
And the king is actually saying we need to follow the law here. I wish our government were doing the same.
In Washington, Karen Kafa, KPBS News.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, the stunning and swift downfall of the former Prince Andrew, who has now been arrested. That's at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
A national nurses union held a day of action across 8 states today to protest immigration enforcement. 3 of those protests were here in San Diego County. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer says the nurses are calling federal immigration enforcement one of the country's top public health threats.
ICE is not welcome here.
Protesters with National Nurses United gathered today to demand Congress stop funding immigration and customs enforcement and Customs and Border Patrol.
Abolish ICE.
The nurses union staged protests at the UC San Diego Health's Hillcrest and La Jolla Medical Centers and Palomar Medical Center Poway.
We started out this morning over at UCSD La Jolla, kind of doing a similar event. We're educating the public about why we're here today, trying to advocate for our patients against ICE.
They want to abolish ICE for what they say is the health and safety of patients and communities. Registered nurse Kendall Hargrove says ICE enforcement has ramped up and tactics have become more brazen under the Trump administration.
ICE is a public health crisis because right now patients are afraid to seek care because they're afraid to go outside.
Hargrove says she has not seen ICE enter her hospital facility, but she says union members in the county have reported ICE inside and around medical facilities.
You begin to ask, do you have a warrant? And suddenly the passenger window explodes with glass everywhere.
Protesters say they want clear protocols for hospitals to reinforce Senate Bill 81. That prohibits hospitals from sharing patients' immigration status with ICE agents unless there's a judicial warrant. In a statement, the Department of Homeland Security said, ICE does not conduct enforcement at hospitals, period. We would only go into a hospital if there were an active danger to public safety. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
Measles remains a major concern in the U.S. There have been 5 new outbreaks so far this year, with cases reported in 24 states. Mandy Gaither talks to a doctor about what to know about the measles and its vaccine.
2 doses of the vaccine that protects against measles are about 97% effective at preventing infection from the virus. But what about that other 3%?
Nothing is 100% effective. They don't make you, immortal.
Dr. Sarah Nozel with the American Academy of Family Physicians says it's rare, but about 3 in every 100 people exposed to measles can still catch the virus, even if they're fully vaccinated against the disease. However, she says getting both doses of the vaccine significantly lowers risk of being infected. And if you do get sick, she says the illness isn't likely to be as severe as it could be in an unvaccinated person.
Sick, at first it can look like a cold. You can get a fever and a cough, red eyes, runny nose. But as you get more sick, 1 in 4 individuals, children who get measles, will end up hospitalized.
Less than 3 months into 2026, there have been 910 confirmed measles cases reported to the CDC. Of those, 94% were in people who were either unvaccinated or their vaccination status was unknown. 30 of those patients were hospitalized, most of them under age 5.
Doctors are afraid of measles. Measles is incredibly scary in the sense that it is so contagious, so if you haven't been protected with a vaccine, you are very likely to get infected if anyone around you has the measles.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
There's been a lot of attention around the new Trump accounts. The accounts can help families start to build savings for their children's future. Here is Ivan Rodriguez with what parents need to know and who is eligible.
This year, families will have one more option to help support their children's financial futures. It's called the 530A account, better known as a Trump account. To qualify, a child has to be under the age of 18 at the end of the year in which the account is open for them. They also must be a U.S. citizen and have a valid Social Security account. The first step for many parents begins this tax season.
File Form 4547 on their taxes when they file this year. That is going to basically tell the IRS that you plan to or want to open this account.
Eligible kids born between January 1st, 2025 and December 31st, 2028 are then expected to receive a one-time contribution of $1,000 from the federal government.
$1,000 over 18 years could easily grow to $3,000 or $4,000.
And if your child isn't born in that time frame,
millions of other children are eligible to open Trump accounts and can get all sorts of free money potentially in forms of contributions from sources other than their families.
Family, friends, employers, states, nonprofit organizations, and philanthropists can all make contributions to an account. However, family and employer contributions combined may not exceed $5,000 a year for a single account. That limit is subject to change in 2027 based on cost of living.
I think so much of the discussion is should I do a Trump account or a 529 plan or a trust account? I think the right answer is both.
I'm Ivan Rodriguez reporting.
San Diegans are letting city leaders know they are sick of pothole-ridden roads. Since the first storm arrived earlier this week, 175 potholes have been reported. Our media partner KGTV reached out to the city to see when they will be able to respond to all of the damage. The city says it will likely take another day or two before they get a good idea of all the work that needs to be done.
On a given day, we can do as many as 15. It just depends on the volume of calls we receive. We'll assess our backlog, and then we'll have one crew out per district, so we'll have as many as 9 crews out at a time, and assess what it looks like. Prioritize emergency pages that come in.
And they say before the rain, they already had a backlog of about 100 potholes, which is actually a historic low for the pothole patching program. If you want to report a pothole in your neighborhood, you can do so through the Get It Done app.
After a series of storms, nice to see this final one begin to push away. In our weather headlines, you can see that we are wrapping up the final round of rain, wind, and mountain snow. But some cooler conditions turn back in. Watch for some patchy frost and even fog late tonight into Friday. The weekend and next week look to be trending drier and warmer. All right, through tonight, we continue to be watching the showers move on out by tomorrow morning. Again, some fog throughout the area, and then we clear out nicely as we head into later Friday and Saturday, starting with sunshine, and that should linger into the weekend. We can see a little bit more moisture starting to move back in by Saturday night. Most of us should remain dry. All right, we still have this final batch here pushing on through. You can see that means more snow across Mount Laguna and some cold showers in Borrego Springs. Watch the showers in San Diego, Oceanside, and Chula Vista beginning to wrap on up as our storm pushes to the east. That does leave behind some cooler conditions through the day on Friday, with temperatures a bit below the historical average, but at least we'll start to see the sun come back out through some clouds. Mount Laguna 36, 63 in Borrego Springs, San Diego at 62, Oceanside and Chula Vista lower end of the 60s. All right, as we head into the end of the weekend and into next week, we're going to be tracking another storm, but this one should track a bit further to the north, so we should remain mainly dry. We'll follow that into the 5-day forecast across the coast, a steady climb in temperatures. Before we know it, we're back to the 70s to start next week. When we look further inland here, lower 60s for a cool Friday, upper 60s lead to mid 70s over the weekend, and early next week stays sunny and pleasant. The mountains stay cloudy and cold for the next few days, even a little bit chilly still on Sunday, before we're back to the 50s on Monday and Tuesday. And across desert locations, still some cooler weather even through Saturday, but we're nearly 80 degrees early next week. For KPBS News, I'm Ariella Scalise.
Ken Kramer's About San Diego is celebrating a big milestone, and tonight is the program's 100th episode right here on KPBS. Tune in at 8 o'clock for a look back at some of the first broadcasts. On Saturday, the Oceanside International Film Festival launches its 15th year with a day of surf films at the Brooks Theater. But KPBS cinema junkie Beth Accomando says this year brings some new challenges for the festival.
The Oceanside International Film Festival is celebrating its 15th year. And if being a small festival weren't challenging enough, this year its home base, the Brooks Theater, is under construction, says Executive Director Lou Niles.
They're expanding, and so we're looking forward to that being complete, to just have a wonderful, better place to present with some of those improvements that they're doing. But we've got our kickoff night and day is Surf Saturday on February 21st at the Brooks Theater, and then we'll move over to the Star Theater Wednesday the 25th through Saturday the 28th.
The Star is just blocks away from the Brooks and easy to spot with its gorgeous vintage neon marquee.
We've really been blessed to have a great partnership with the Stars. Amazing theater with over 400 seats, a big, beautiful stage. So we're looking forward to trying that out with the whole body of the film festival.
The festival opens with its signature surf programming, which takes viewers from surfing in Taiwan to a surf musical. Then it moves to the Star, where audiences can see a documentary about the first medical marijuana dispensary, a story about lesbian birds, and a sci-fi tale about renting out your body.
Welcome to Tenancy. Turn your time into money.
We offer our guests the opportunity to temporarily use another person's body.
The Star will also host artistic director Carly Star Brulo Niles' annual one-on-one filmmaker talk. This year, it's with Catherine Hardwick.
Catherine Hardwick and I worked together on 3 different films. And so I reached out to her, and she's just an extraordinary artist. She's just going to go through her process, really, of how she makes a film and how she develops it.
For the documentary Desert Angel, audiences will also have a chance to hear Vista filmmaker Vincent DeLuca discuss his process.
He followed a very emotional story about Raphael, who came to this country as an immigrant 40 years ago. He legalized himself, and then he started on a path to help the new immigrants into safety.
This year, all the feature films happen to be documentaries.
I think we've always been known for really thoughtful subjects, so they lend themselves to documentaries.
Niles adds that the festival never programs with a specific genre or theme in mind.
We don't set a theme because it's set by the filmmakers that submit, and those films often tell a story of how people are feeling in the world that year.
But plenty of narrative stories can still be found in the shorts blocks.
And we put a lot of thought in our programming. Sterling Anno and I work very hard on putting together blocks that really flow together.
Every year, Carly and I go through titles within the multitudes of hundreds, and it's about a 6-month process to go through so many films, even with the programmers that work with us.
Co-director of programming, Sterling Anno.
It's an arduous process, but also a very rewarding one. Seeing all the stories and that come out to the zeitgeist in a given year, you really know what the primary talking points of the world are.
And Oceanside International Film Festival wants to provide a platform for filmmakers to be heard, especially now.
I think it's very important in the world at this point to support film and the arts. Yeah. I think it's kind of a different climate now that we're in our lives, and I think that the arts save and they make everything better, and it's amazing and an honor for us to help run this film festival.
The Oceanside International Film Festival has always been about supporting the arts and making things better through film. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
Here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. Survivors of last year's Los Angeles wildfires say they're caught in the middle of a political battle over disaster aid. NPR's Morning Edition reports on how that's making it difficult for some to rebuild. And San Diego FC is preparing for its season opener this Saturday at Snapdragon Stadium. KPBS Roundtable will talk about expectations for the team's second season. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Enjoy your evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.